Welcome to another episode of I Take
D.
Today's topic is going to be marriage and in-laws. We want to remind you that if you have any questions that you would like to ask that we can put in our next episode, please private message us so your information is not all out there. Follow us on Facebook on I Take D Ministry. Share the videos if you believe this could be of a blessing to someone else. So again, topic, marriage and in-laws.
That's right. And today's topic is something that is really uncomfortable sometimes to talk about, marriage and in-laws, but it comes with a package. When you decided to marry your partner, it came with the in-laws. And I just want to remind you that, the blessing that it is to have, that partner next to you and beside you, the person that you look at every single day. If it wasn't for some parents, this person that you love and you're spending the rest of your life with would have never been here. So just remember that your in-laws is a great blessing because they gave you this wonderful gift that is now your spouse. And with that,
I saw it that way.
Yep. And with that, I want to talk about the love and kindness. I know many of us as goes in a marriage and don't have a great relationship with in-laws, and probably you still don't have a great relationship with your in-laws, no matter how many years you've been married. But I just want to make sure that you understand that being love and kind goes a long way, regardless of how that person treats you and how that significant other, thinks of you. Love and kindness goes in such a long way, and it makes the other person understand, and especially your in-laws in this perspective, that regardless of how they feel about you, you're always going to be love and kind to them.
Yeah, you gotta show them that love and be respectful, because at the end of the day, they are your spouse's parents. And regardless of whether they're just not clicking with you, you guys are not getting along, be the bigger person. Don't be the one caught up in this mess of being mean and they're being mean to you. Don't. And one of the ways you can avoid that is by keeping your disagreements private. I mean, how many times have you've gotten into a disagreement with your spouse, and then you go to your parents? So for example, let's say me and Carla get into a disagreement, and then I go to my parents' home and my wife is not there, and they're like, "Oh, you okay?" "Oh, I'm not, because Carla's like this and she's like that." What I've done by doing that is that I've already damaged my wife's reputation with my parents, which is the worst people to damage her reputation with. Because remember, at the end of the day, my parents, no one can love me as much as they do. No woman can be the best wife that can be, because I'm their child. My mom will always think that no woman would ever give her son the best love. And by talking about her, what I've done is I just damage that view of my spouse. And all that creates then is friction, because every time my parents see Carla, they're going to see a woman that's making their son's life, in their eyes, miserable. And you don't want to do that unless there are some abusive things going on. Obviously, if there are some abusive things going on, you need to share that with somebody. It might not be your parents, but you got to share that with someone. It might just be the authorities. But what I'm talking about here is just things that are just disagreements, normal disagreements that happen within a relationship. Do not, share that with your in-laws. Do not share that with your parents, because it's just not right between your marriage.
And that also brings you to another perspective, having breathing room. In-laws, this is for you. Making sure that you give that couple a breathing room for them to make their own decisions, for them to make their own mistakes. And I know there are some loving in-laws out there, and I'm gracious for my in-laws as well. I love them dearly, but sometimes we have to make sure they understand that in order for that family to grow, they need to do their own mistake. They need to learn from their own errors. And sometimes I know that in-laws feel like being with them is just a form of being loving, and they do it unintentionally at all. But at the end of the day, the couple may look at it as controlling. So you have to be careful that the couple doesn't think of your not giving them enough breathing room as being controlling. I know you're being loving, but for them, it's kind of probably looks a little bit more controlled.
Yeah, and you know, we know that the in-laws sometimes are just trying to be helpful. They're trying to be supportive, and that's okay. You want to do that. Just, you know, create balance. I can share from my own personal story when we were first together. We used to spend 5 days out of 7 days of the week in my parents' home, and my mom, God bless her heart, she used to cook for us, our kids, my sister, her family, my brother, his family. Imagine, I mean, it's almost like she still had all of us at home, plus our you know, our additions of spouses and children. And my mom never complained about it. This is not why I'm sharing this. I'm sharing this because it wasn't until a point where my wife said, you know what, this is wrong. Like, we should have our own time as a family to sit at the table, at the dinner table, and just an opportunity to share with us, you know, meaning my wife and I and our kids. And yes, you know, there's still room there for spending time with my parents or the in-laws. And what we did is we separated one day out of the week. So every Thursday of every week, we go to my parents' home, and we, you know, my mom will cook or my dad, and we will just spend time with them. But it's different than being there 5 days out of the week. And then, you know, what that did to us is just, it didn't even give us time as an inner family to interact, to, you know, spend some time at the dinner table.
Yeah, and it actually didn't allow me to just be a wife to my husband and to my children, and it cut the boundaries of actually me having a family dinner, cooking for my family in my own home. So I just have to acknowledge, I know she was doing it out of her kindness of her heart. She's a loving woman, and God bless her heart. So as my father-in-law, and they just want her children to be together. Which parent does not want that? But at the end of the day, I needed to grow as a wife, right? I'm coming into this relationship, this environment of new people that I don't know, and I needed to also give time to my husband and my daughters in my own home, and be able to cook for them and have that one-on-one conversations and family dinners. So I needed to also grow as a wife by doing those little things. And it may not seem such a big deal, but at the long run, it does impact in your marriage.
It does. And you just, again, it's building that balance. I mean, look, we all got to build our own privacy. Yes, I came from my parents' home, but now I have my own family, and so you have to build in that privacy time where it's you and your inner family, you, your spouse, and your children, and then, you know, create a healthy time to spend time with your in-laws and spend time with your parents, with your family, because that's also important. One other point I wanted to bring up is, you know, I want to give advice to spouse, and that is, don't speak negatively about your in-laws. Don't do it. You know, at the end of the day, if I spoke negatively about my mother-in-law, at the end of the day, I have to remind myself it is still her mom. You know, that's not up to me. Even if she frustrates me, which she normally doesn't. I mean, my mother-in-law treats me like her son. And sometimes we make jokes because I'll say, you know what, your mom treats me better than she treats you. In a very loving way. I'm not saying that her mom is mean to her, but what I'm saying is, like, you know, her mom will normally be on my side. So I've been very, very blessed to have a wonderful, wonderful mother-in-law, and also, you know, the family that comes with that. And yes, we all have our issues. We all have our things. We all have the things that kind of get under our skin, but don't speak negatively about your spouse's parents. It's not helpful. If your spouse wants to share their frustration with you about their own parents, that's up to them. But don't be the one saying, "Oh, your mom is like this," or "I can't stand your mom." No, don't do that, because they're still a parent, and you got to respect that.
Absolutely, and I think that brings me also into parenting. I know as a parent, and especially if you're new to the parent role, you know, in-laws have that experience of being parents, And
they're almost like experts.
They're more like experts. So this is for the in-laws. Just be careful in how you criticize or talk to the couple in regards to their discipline, style. Again, we are in a different era, in a different generation. Parenting changes as with the years go by and generations.
It changes from kid to kid. I mean, the way we treated our oldest is way different.
Exactly.
Not that we have favoritism. It's just we learn some things like, ooh, I shouldn't do that.
I told that to my daughter all the time. I made a lot of mistakes with you, and with my second one, I'm like, I learned from the mistakes that I made with the oldest. It's unfortunately, but we are like that as parents. So I know in-laws tend to kind of butt in regards to how we discipline our children. So just have decently, respectfully, you can kind of talk to the couple about discipline matters. But at the end of the day, that's that couple and that discipline and how they're doing that incorporated in their home. And it's important for us not to intrigue or be part of that, because couples can take it and can bring conflicts home that you may not know of.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's as an in-law, we truly appreciate the wisdom that you bring into even new parents, and that's important as well, because if as an in-law you see that there is either potential for abuse or discipline that's just not fair to the child or just too harsh, then I definitely share that, but don't do it in front of the kids.
Absolutely.
Because then the kids feel like who has more authority in the home? Grandparents, the in-laws, or mom and dad who are at home with me every day. And you be surprised sometimes if the in-laws get too involved, the child loses respect for the parents.
Yes.
And listens more to the grandparents.
Yes.
What I'm saying is that child should listen to the parents and the grandparents. Mm-hmm. But when they're at home, there has to be a balance of listening to what your parents are saying. So in-laws, again, don't take this as a scolding.
No, it creates a balance.
Yeah.
It creates a balance. We talk about from our own perspective. When we're at grandpa's house, whatever happens at grandpa stays at grandpa, right?
Like
that saying, but just remember as a parent, you're looking down at your grandchild and setting some examples, and the parents are right there, and they may have different rules and things at home, and that causes friction. That causes a little, conflicts and arguments within the way of parenting style. So yes, our parenting styles are different. They are going to continue to change as generations to come. But it teaches me that when my daughters have their own family, I have to understand how I felt, right?
Yeah.
As the spouse. And from the in-laws, where we have to remember that, because it does impact the relationship of a marriage. So again, we love your advice, we love your feedback, but just do it in a way that is loving and kind, and that we don't take it as criticism and kind of judging, because that is for couples, that seems to be a little bit more hurtful.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story we have, and that is when our youngest, she was coming off the pacifier, and man, one night we just said, you know what, that's it. She's old enough. She should not have a pacifier. And those who can relate, you'll know that the first few nights when you take the pacifier away, oh my God, they're just screaming and crying and not letting you sleep throughout the night. And we had two horrible nights. And then the one day she's getting over it, she goes to my parents' home and my dad gives her a pacifier. I wanted to scream, and I called him and I lovingly, I said, Dad, you just don't know the struggles we had. And my dad understood very well. He said, you know what, I'm so sorry. I should have never done that, because it was then when he understood, like, Dad, we went through so much just trying to get her off the pacifier. And here you are, being the grandparent that you are, like, here you go, a pacifier. Again, grandparents or in-laws, we're not saying this because you are mean. No, we know as a grandparent, your job is to spoil those kids.
That's right.
Just be very careful that you don't step on your children's toes, because when you were that age, when you were with the young kids, you didn't want that to happen to you.
And that's important, because at the end of the day, that it was the way we approached the matter, the love and the kindness and the way that he understood. And then sometimes if you're not speaking up to your in-laws in a respectful manner, they will never understand what happens at home, you know, and that's so important.
Thank you for joining us on I Take D Ministry. Until next time.